The widower has learned that numbers are friendlier than evenings. He can control a price, not a memory. He speaks in specials and discounts the way a sailor reads a chart, and he keeps the counter gleaming, because it is easier to polish steel than to polish grief. Then Edith appears with a pocketbook and a mood like sunshine. She always makes small talk feel bigger than it is, and she asks questions that sound like kindness because they are. For a few minutes, the shop is a place where nobody's alone, and the bell over the door is an instrument in the orchestra of an ordinary day. The conversation migrates as conversations in the neighborhood tend to from storefront to living room. A standing rib rose to coffee pots, burble, a piano that brings out songs older than the sheet music on paper, that's all it is. But the widower arrives with a hope that outruns the invitation, and when he calls Edith Liebchen, the room tilts. The gift she gives him is not the coffee or the harmonies, it's the boundary. She returns the misreading without cruelty resetting. The framed kindness is not a down payment on romance, and hospitality does not imply a vacancy sign. When Archie storms in later with a joke about cleavers and a territorial swagger, he's performing a role he knows by heart. Yet he recognizes under all the bluster the miracle his wife performs daily, how she warms a neighborhood without ever letting the house catch fire. From that warm room, the story slips into a colder one, a bar storeroom after closing a door that latches at the wrong moment, a painted shut window with bars that turn a prank into a night-long treaty. Archie and Michael have made a sport of misunderstanding each other. One speaks in punchlines, the other in footnotes, and the lock steals their exits until the only way out is conversation. It begins like a vaudeville routine about street Bernards and brandy barrels and a pope who approves expenses. It becomes something harder when Archie reaches for the Ark again, his favorite portable model of the world, where same stay with same's chaos is averted and nobody has to admit how much fear is doing the talking. Michael's rebuttals are familiar logic, sharpened into a chisel, but the room's quiet forces him to set the tool down and ask a better question: where did you learn that? The answer is not an argument. It is a scene with bad lighting and a boy who was supposed to be sleeping overhearing a father divide a family's future by intelligence, the gifted son and the son with the bird brain, the college track and the graveyard shift. You can feel the insult still hot after decades, not because the words were true, but because the boy accepted them as the weather of his life. Michael doesn't deliver a lecture this time. He delivers a line that sounds small and lands like a rescue. Your father was wrong. The night doesn't turn them into best friends, but it opens the only door that mattered, the one inside Archie that leads away from inherited contempt and toward a self who doesn't need to win to survive. Gloria and Michael's mountain detour offers a different lesson about time, that the clock inside a marriage can't be wound by props. They arrive in a Poconos room built for romance and immediately trip over the furniture. The silky gown turns theatrical. The chair won't cooperate. A counting game at the bathroom door slides from sweet to silly to self-defeating. And they keep falling back on subjects that require no vulnerability. Basketball, streaks the weather, what the thermostat might be saying about them. When the word divorce walks in like a stray dog and refuses to leave the honesty it demands, is brutal and helpful. They begin to name what's gone missing without pretending it was ever simple sleep spontaneity, the sense that every touch was a new sentence rather than a punctuation mark in a long paragraph. The breakthrough is not cinematic, it's logistical. They decide to stop treating desire like a destination and start treating it like a practice attention before assumption, clarity before choreography. Laughter permitted even at serious moments, because shame kills affection faster than time does. When the maid almost knocks at exactly the wrong second, the near embarrassment breaks the tension, and their relief is its own rekindling. They won't return from the mountains as different people, but they will return as a pair newly literate in each other's language. The past shows up not as an idea, but as a person when Archie's brother Alfred steps through the door, the way a man steps across an old crack in a sidewalk, hoping it won't widen. He brings with him two artifacts that hum louder than any greeting a railroad pocket watch, their father once wound, and a sealed letter with instructions to wait before opening. The watch is beautiful and untrustworthy, losing half an hour a day. The letter is orderly and destabilizing, promising a truth that can't be consumed on demand. Their first exchange is a museum of petty grievances with plaques welded on the roach. Derby the spilled cola, the absent funeral. The choices one brother made that the other treated like insults to decency. Around them, Edith sets out cups, and Gloria navigates small talk like a seasoned pilot, while Michael tests whether a joke can be a rope bridge. Archie refuses to say brother, and Alfred refuses to pretend he doesn't miss hearing it. The artifacts do their quiet work. The watch migrates into Archie's pocket like a piece of metal finding its magnet. The letter negotiates a delay that both men need. They part without victory, which is better than parting without hope. Neutral ground helps, so they meet again at the bar, a place where Archie knows every bottle by its label and can smell a lie from the cork. Alfred is less theatrical this time. He admits when he tried to outrun that drinking through the funeral was not a celebration, but a failure of nerve, and he lets the admission sit in the room without decorating it. Archie admits that he believed their father, even when belief made him small, and that the discipline he wore like armor kept out oxygen too. They do not assign blame. They trade burdens, and each man discovers he can carry the others for a few minutes without collapsing. They agree to leave the letter sealed until a Sunday afternoon when the city itself softens. The plan is half ritual, half truce. Archie slips the watch back into his pocket with a motion that looks like habit and is actually prayer. All the while, the neighborhood keeps playing its background music of chores and gags and smells that announce the hour better than clocks do. The shop specials change in the window. A cash drawer refuses to reconcile to the penny. A child learns how to count time on a digital face and then asks why a watch with hands can be wrong and still be loved. Old songs attach hooks to memory and pull everyone into choruses they only half remember. Don't sit under the apple tree in the mood. The theme about how those were the days and the errors in the lyrics never matter as much as the fact that they're singing together. Food remains the house's most reliable diplomacy. A roast that feeds more mouths than planned coffee, poured strong enough to unstick silence's cake that travels across feuds faster than apologies can. You could call these details filler if you didn't understand how intimacy works. In this story, they are the scaffolding. They carry weight. The butcher re-enters smaller in posture and clearer in eyes. He's embarrassed by the mistake he made at the piano and grateful for a refusal that didn't wound him. When he wraps a smaller cut for Edith another day and jokes about how meat and men both benefit from resting before serving, he is telling you he learned the lesson. She doesn't claim victory, that would ruin it. She thanks him and lets the bell take care of punctuation. He's not a villain and never was. He was lonely and misread a page. The neighborhood's mercy is that it lets him turn to the next one. Archie's adjustments are tiny and obvious if you're counting. He still classifies the world before he greets it, still slots people into cabinets labeled for his safety, but the cabinet doors aren't slamming anymore. He pauses where he never paused. He skips an easy insult that would have gotten a laugh. He says Al and leaves off the prickly tail of a joke that used to follow the nickname around like a caution sign. The change doesn't erase his roughness, it refines it. There is a new kind of comedy in him, not the kind that lands on other people to keep them at a distance, but the kind that lands on shared ground and makes everyone a little less afraid. Michael meets him there, trading his megaphone for a conversational voice when the moment calls for it, proving that righteousness is more useful when it remembers how to be polite. The Sunday ritual arrives like weather, already forecast slow lunch dishes, washed poorly a nap, promised and postponed, an envelope slid from one jacket pocket to a table. Archie brings the deck of cards as agreed. Shuffling is his sedative. Alfred brings the letter and a sandwich wrapped in paper a little too lovingly for a man who pretends not to care about ceremony. They deal, they don't keep score, they talk about small things because that is how men who fear big ones make room. When the time comes, Alfred breaks the seal while Archie watches, not because Archie is timid, but because courage for him has always been a physical act rather than a paper one. The reading doesn't pour light into the room. It confirms what the night already taught them. Their father wrote like a man who trusted work more than words, and he used the ones he had a memory about the watch. A confused attempt at fairness. An apology disguised as instructions for property, a clumsy declaration that love was present, even when kindness wasn't. The letter is smaller than the pain and large enough to help. It gives them permission to stop taking inventories of injuries and practice attendance instead. Attending is what everyone begins to do in their own accents. Gloria and Michael turn their Poconos comedy into a house policy check before presuming, and don't be offended if the answer is precise. They practice this with 1,000 negligible acts: who takes the bed's left side tonight and why, whether coffee should be poured before a conversation continues, what time the apartment's quiet hour should begin, and the accumulation produces a climate. Heat returns not as fireworks, but as a reliable thermostat. Edith adds a clause to her kindness attention yes, and also a sense of where kindness ends. She keeps baking too many cookies and sings, as if the notes will behave for her this time. But she has learned to make no sound like a blessing, rather than an accusation, and the neighborhood respects her for it. The butcher sends a holiday card that thanks her for being the sort of person who can say no gently. She reads, it smiles the way she smiles at piano keys after a missed chord, and files it where she keeps proof that the world can be taught. Archie's bar takes on a new frequency. It is still the place where men brag and mourn in the same sentence, still the place where laughter hides grief like a coat. But if you listen at the right moment, you hear him interrupt a tall tale to ask a real question, or you watch him let someone else finish a line he would have stolen, or you notice that his opinions arrive a half-inch softer when he's talking about people instead of categories. The register still comes up short sometimes, and he still curses the stupidity of arithmetic, but he's a bit quicker to let a small deficit slide to tomorrow, which is its own kind of faith. The watch finds a new life as an explainer of things that are hard to name. A kid asks why it's wrong. Archie explains that it isn't wrong so much as it keeps its own pace, and that if you know a thing's pace, you can live with it. The line sounds like grandfather wisdom because it is, and the room registers the metaphor without remark. Alfred, listening, pockets a smile instead of a retort. Later, at a table that used to be hostile territory, the brothers compare notes in the only language they share: perfectly complaints phrased as jokes, jokes phrased as help. The letter goes into a drawer not because it doesn't matter, but because it has done its work. The watch goes back into a pocket because it still asks for tending, and tending is what they have agreed to try. The neighborhood hasn't changed its bones. Prices still rise in windows. Songs still falter at the same bridge. Children still repeat words they heard on stoops. Arguments about sames and differences still flare, especially when news from farther away rattles the local glass. But these episodes leave behind a different reflex one that interrupts the old routine by half a second. Before a nickname flies, someone bites it back. Before a theory sorts a stranger, somebody asks a name. Before a man hides fear in a joke, he lets the fear be seen blurry at the edges. That half second is the gift. It doesn't make saints. It makes neighbors a little easier to live with, and family a little easier to repair. By the time this version closes its loop, the picture looks deceptively familiar. A kitchen table with more chairs than you thought you owned. A roast cut thicker than the knives. Deserved coffee poured into cups that don't match a deck of cards that sticks at the corners from stories and gravy. The butcher's bell rings down the block at opening and again at closing. Michael and Gloria trade the kind of look that measures not excitement, but trust. Edith hums badly, and everyone thanks her for it because they like the way the air feels when she's in the room. Archie sits in his chair, a man who still believes in rules, but has begun to believe in exceptions that resemble kindness. Alfred knocks before entering is invited in, and forgets to check his watch because the house has its own time now, and he likes it. On the mantel sits nothing dramatic, just a snapshot that proves a moment happened. On the dresser lies an envelope whose crease has softened from being opened and refolded, and in a pocket a watch ticks faithfully wrong, ordering the day not by perfection, but by care.